And the wild ride continues. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this Wednesday, hump day, and it's going to be another interesting day. If we look back to yesterday, there was a point in time early in the day yesterday, we were up 400 points on the Dow. Things looked pretty daggone good. We're up 100 points on the NASDAQ. Looked pretty good. And then it suddenly just flipped. And it's just amazing how fast this market these days, the velocity of the moves is absolutely extraordinary. We've been talking about that for a long time. Yesterday is a prime example of that. Up 400 points, and by the end of the day, we were down 500 points. Closed on the day off of that, but down 490 points on the day. Then you look at the NASDAQ down 100. Before you know it, it's back to flat. Next thing you know, it's getting hit pretty hard to the downside, and it was down 340 points by the time we rang the bell. Just a very, very interesting day on how fast things can move in the markets that we are all involved with today. Crude, that was one of the levels that we've been talking about, kind of just cutting and moving down to 103, then back to 107, then back to 110. Well, yesterday we actually finished the day nearly 112, so a pretty solid day for crude. Energy actually had a very nice productive day, up nearly 3%, even with all of what was getting pushed to the downside yesterday, and it was Chevron, it was Exxon. We were seeing options across the board in so many different names in the energy space. Then you have ConocoPhillips, you have BP, you have Occidental. Occidental on a nice big move to the upside again. But you look at the 2-year, you look at the 10-year, I've brought this up time and time again, not a whole lot of movement there, but we certainly did have movement within the market from that opening bell to that closing bell. Just extraordinary. Volatility started to jump back up again. We were in the 26.5 area by the end of the day, finishing up about 2850 on the volatility index. So we're getting a little bit of a push, a little bit closer towards that 30 mark. Today, we were getting a little bit closer again, and then suddenly things have been moving around. Volumes yesterday, 34 million contracts. That's pretty pathetic considering. But all you've got to do is go back over a year or 2 years ago, and then you'd say, wow, that's a monstrous day. But it's no longer a monstrous day since we're averaging 42 million contracts a day. Bitcoin, been hanging around. It's right between that area of, call it 19,000 to about 21,000, and that's where we seem to be finding Bitcoin of late. Seems like that's been within the range where we have been, somewhere right near that 20,000, as a matter of fact, today. Financials, they got beat up a little bit yesterday, but not too terrible. It was consumer discretionary that really got hammered yesterday, down about 4%. Then I look over at technology, down about 3%. It's understandable why the markets moved the way they did, and we've got a big representation of some of those names within the Dow and within, obviously, the S&P and within the NASDAQ itself. But Amazon and Tesla both got hammered pretty good yesterday, part of that consumer discretionary. And then you look over at the technology side of things, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, Tesla, all getting hit to the downside. You can understand why we were getting that movement that we got, because the acceleration of selling and that push to the downside, certainly something that was a huge influence. I'll tell you what, those beta energy names, they have been working like a charm of late. As I mentioned, we had a lot of energy buying yesterday. We had the big boys, we had Chevron, we had Exxon. But it wasn't just those. We were also seeing a lot of the others, the next level down, some of those beta names that we talk about. What was really working pretty nice yesterday? Well, Diamondback, Marathon Oil, certainly Occidental. I already mentioned that name. How about Hess having a really good day? Las Vegas Sands, Winds, those are the kind of names that actually did pretty well yesterday. But it was more of a day of just selling pressure. Nike, definitely one of those names leading the downside charge, because a lot of the concerns about what was said on the earnings and really not having a great visual going forward. They did have that monster buyback, and for a moment or two, that helped out. But then it finally gave way, and the stock really got hammered pretty big yesterday. AMD and NVIDIA also getting beat up. I also mentioned a name like Meta, Facebook, however you want to call it. That was getting beat up. Datadog, Zscaler, Zoom. Those are the names that were kind of pulling things to the downside. So as we get into today, after that wild ride that started up so strong and then really just got hammered late in the day, a lot of people questioning, well, where are we today? Well, we look pretty flat, quite frankly. I mean, early on, we were looking at the Dow up about 45 points, something like that. Nothing big. Everything was pretty quiet. The NASDAQ was down just a little bit. I was looking also over at the S&P, almost completely flat. The S&P has just been wavering around plus or minus 5 or 10 points. That's exactly what the first hour of the day has looked like. On the other side of things, some crazy moves there. We've had the NASDAQ down close to 100 points. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, we actually come all the way back and we were flat. Then I look over at the Dow. The Dow was flat, started a little bit of a move. The next thing you know, we exploded to the upside. We were up 200 points. Then we pulled back a little bit, up 150, 130 points. That's about where we were the last I looked, the last chance I had to look before coming on with everybody. But I'll tell you, crude oil, another step higher, 113, 114, kind of an area is where we find ourselves today. The 2s and 10s, not a whole lot, so we're not going to waste any time on that right now. Volatility index, yes, approaching that 29, but as we flip things around, we did pull back a little bit. We were about 28.5 last I looked, but that volatility, of course, that's only in the first hour. There's a long day in front of us outside of just this first hour. Energy started up 0.5% today, or a 0.5 point, yeah. Then we moved to negative, and we were down about 0.5 point. So gives you a little bit of an idea. The one thing that really did stand out for me today as far as flipping and really having a big move was healthcare. Early on, not really doing a whole lot. The next thing you know, it starts to pop a little bit. It was up about 0.6%. We did see some flips in some of the others as well. Consumer discretionary was down a little over 0.5%. That got into positive territory as well. But other than that, just not a whole lot going on. Bed Bath & Beyond was what everybody was talking about. I will be on the halftime report today. We will be talking about that as well, because an extraordinary quarter, once again, an extraordinary move with the CEO getting sort of basically shown the door. And certainly after looking at what was going on in same-store sales and all the different numbers that they produced, it's understandable why they need to move on, and they need to move on in a hurry, because they are literally, it's a stock now that we can barely talk about on television. There are restrictions oftentimes that they give us when you've got certain market caps. And it's in that kind of a category now when you're talking about a $500 million market cap. That's something that they like to kind of stay away from, because they don't want to see the kind of movement that they can get out of that. On the flip side of that, I'll tell you what, General Mills just came out with a great quarter. Stock was up about 3% early on. And that's with the market that early on was seeing that little bit of a pressure to the downside. General Mills was hanging in there pretty good. A lot going on within the markets themselves. You got names like Cisco, not the tech Cisco, but the food Cisco. That was in positive territory. Kroger's in positive territory. McDonald's in positive territory. Throw in Amazon and Vertex. You've got a pretty nice group of names there, broad group of names that were actually working pretty well. What was not working well at all is Carnival Cruise. That was down about 11%. Then I look over at Norwegian, because you always want to check out the rest of them. Royal and Norwegian were both also getting hammered to the downside, along with so many names in the chip space, and a lot of commentary about the chip space today. AMD, NVIDIA, Marvell, Applied Materials. I'm looking over also at like a Skyworks getting hammered to the downside as well. Throw in Honeywell. Nike early on, it was getting hit pretty hard. Then it started to come back a little bit. So that one's going to kind of a wild card today. We'll see how that trades. We already know yesterday it was getting hammered. It started off the day getting hammered once again, and then made a little quick flip. Part of what was actually shifting the Dow, no doubt about it, given the fact that it was down where it was and then all of a sudden back into positive territory. Two unusuals, and we're out of here. And then I've got the noon show today, the halftime show. We got Melissa Lee hosting that show, so it should be a lot of fun. Look forward to that as well. Fisker is my first one. Fisker was trading about $8.75. This is a space that's been very, very interesting, the EV space. Well, Fisker, 6,300 of the August 9 calls getting bought today. Those are going for anywhere close to $1. They were 92 cents up to about $1.25. 6,300 of those. Also, the fact that they're going out to August, interesting to see that. We haven't seen as much of that. It's been a lot more shorter term, whether that means this Friday expiring or going somewhere deeper into July. But going out to August, that's something that gives you a little bit more time for Fisker to make that move. AMD. We just talked about how AMD and many of those in the chip space getting absolutely hammered. AMD today was trading right around $78.20. Yeah, I know. It used to be a $100 stock. It used to be a $120 stock. It has been hammered. So it's trading $78.20. 5,900 of Friday's expiring 78 puts were bought for $1.75 up to about $1.95. Give you a little bit of perspective there that they are looking not only for today, but over the next couple of days, and that's it because it expires on Friday, July 1st. But looking for AMD to stay under some of the pressure that it's been under, including today that we're seeing across the semi space. Folks, have a great day of trading. It's going to be a busy day for me. I got to check out. Have a great day of trading. I'll see you tomorrow.